The new executive series would not be possible without the tremendous support of our sponsors. Thank you to all of our sponsors who have continuously supported the LVEDC mission during this time. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Lehigh Valley Health Network, our premier sponsor, Capital Blue Cross, our gold sponsors, BB&T Now Truist, Fitzpatrick, Lentz & Buba, and Penn Teledata, our event sponsors, Crayola and Good Shepherd, our interview sponsor, Follett, and our production sponsor, Countess COMMUNICATIONS. We also would like to thank our host, ArtsQuest. Thanks again to all of our sponsors. We hope you enjoy the new executive series.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Nestor, President and Chief Executive Officer at Lehigh Valley Health Network. At LVHN, we offer nationally recognized care close to home. Today and every day, our focus is on the health of our community. We know that a healthy community paves the way for a healthy economy. We're proud to partner with Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation as we work together to make the Lehigh Valley strong, vibrant, and safe.
Thank you very much for joining us for the LVEDC Executive Interview Series. We launched this series recently because in the last 18 months, we have had about 15 different major employers in the Lehigh Valley, name new presidents, CEOs, regional vice presidents. So we have a large group of new folks that are really driving forward the economy of the Lehigh Valley, helping to shape our community, our economy. So we're in these difficult times where we can't gather together as we would usually do or would like to do, we're making an attempt to introduce you to some of these very important folks who are leading our companies and leading our economy. And we're really, really thrilled today to have Pat Turner with us. Pat is the president of the North American region of FLSmidth. Many of you know FLSmidth from its former name, Fuller Company. Fuller Company and FLSmidth have been a presence in the Lehigh Valley for a century. And Pat has been with FLSmidth for quite a long time, I think since back in the 80s, but about 18 months ago was named the president of the North American region. So Pat, thank you very much for joining us and welcome.
Thanks, Don. It's great to be part of the interview series. I appreciate the invitation, and I wish I could be there in person instead of over Zoom due to COVID.
Right. And you know, we wish you could be here as well. And but we realize also that many folks may not know FLSmidth is a Danish-owned company that's headquarters are in Copenhagen. And it became part of the Lehigh Valley business community back in 1990 when it acquired Fuller Company, which Fuller Company goes back to the 20s in Catasauqua. So that's coming up almost on 100 years. And I know you've been with FLSmidth for quite some time. Could tell us a little bit about the trajectory of your career with FLSmidth?
Okay, sure. So I'm an engineer by training. I won't say the exact year I graduated, and moved with a company called Krebs Engineers, which sold equipment to the mining industry, and was in sales, and then held a number of positions, including even CFO at one time, and then eventually became the president of that company. We were acquired by FLSmidth in 1996,
okay,
and been part of FLSmidth. In 2006, we were acquired by FLSmidth, and we've been part of them since then. I've also held roles as head of our GPLM. What that means is all our product line managers for our different products. I was head of that group, and then 18 months ago, as you mentioned, became president of North America.
Now, for folks who may not know exactly what FLSmidth produces and what business it's in the United States and in the world, I think the shorthand we kind of know of FLSmidth / Fuller here in the Lehigh Valley is in the cement industry, which
Right.
the cement industry developed here in large part in the Lehigh Valley because of the limestone in the area. But today, FLSmidth's presence across the world is focused in what areas?
Right. So we have two complementary business areas. The first is cement, where we're the premier provider of equipment and complete plants to the worldwide cement industry. And the second part of our business is the mining industry, where, again, on the mineral processing side, so mostly the equipment that's in the processing plants, we're the leader of a full flow sheet of equipment from the in-pit crushing into the concentrator, the flotation where they separate the copper, and then the dewatering. We have all of that equipment, and that's the second half of our business.
So it's both development and production of the equipment for mining operations, and then actual development of the physical cement plants, right?
Right. And so in addition to the equipment, we also have the complete life cycle services. So we combine the projects with the equipment and the life cycle services, and that forms an unparalleled offering for our customers in those two industries.
Here in Bethlehem, there are offices obviously throughout the world. There's in the North American region, you have offices in Salt Lake City, Utah. You have this longstanding presence in this operation here in Bethlehem, in the Lehigh Valley. What part of the business is done here in the Lehigh Valley?
Okay, so our cement operations are centered in our Bethlehem office. So all of our sales, service offerings, our local engineering, some product development is worked out of the Bethlehem office. And so pretty much anything that we do or sell or service in North America, and North America, as we define it, is from Panama through to Canada, is directed out of Bethlehem.
Okay. And about how many, roughly how many folks does that translate to working for the company here in Bethlehem?
So about 250.
Very nice. And because of that presence across the world and your trajectory as a metallurgical engineer and your career of having your own company, you've been all over the world, right? I mean, you've worked in Brazil, South Africa, Australia, China, lived in Australia for a while, I believe.
Yep, right. Yeah, I mean, and that's common for the FLSmidth employees. It's a very global company. We're very much, from as far as our colleagues go, we like to have meetings together, to interact together, and we like to visit customers too. And the customers in both cement and mining are not always located, near New York City or near Salt Lake City or places like that. So we have to travel to them, and most of our employees enjoy that. And that's one of the big advantages of working with FLSmidth, is this opportunity to travel and see different things.
Now, so you, throughout your career, have spent a lot of time probably in airplanes and having your passport stamped all over the place. What are your perceptions about the Lehigh Valley and Bethlehem as a market and as a home for a major part of FLSmidth?
Well, the cement market itself is a combination of global and local. Cement cannot be easily transported, so a lot of the cement is really demand for plants and equipment and services is based on how the local market is doing. So recently, of course, with COVID, some of the markets have been hit pretty hard, like in the Northeast, and some not as hard, like in the Mountain West or in the South, where the demand has stayed pretty consistent. So overall, the cement side is doing pretty well. And then as far as Bethlehem and the office, I mean, it's really of a major part of the customer base for this region. Of course, with New York being so close, the travel is relatively easy. And as anybody who lives in the Lehigh Valley knows, the restaurants are great. And so it's really a nice place to be. I'm partial to the Bethlehem Hotel myself. When I visit, I'll throw a little shout out.
Well, and I'm sure Bruce Haynes and the folks at Hotel Bethlehem will be grateful for that. Yeah. So you're usually, because you're traveling and running the whole North American division, under normal times, you're here 1 or 2 weeks out of a month.
That's right. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and spend a lot of that time in downtown Bethlehem, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice place. But really, the depth or the breadth of the restaurants and and so on is really really outstanding.
Yeah, that's
you know, I've lived a lot in California and in Arizona and Salt Lake, and I was really surprised, having not spent much time in the Lehigh Valley until I received this role, at how good the restaurants are and what a nice place it is. Wintertime is a little tough. I've spent a lot of time in Arizona, so that's a transition, but it's a really great location, and it's also nice to be able to 75 miles be in Manhattan too. So
you know, Pat, this last minute or two, your answer may end up in an advertisement for the Lehigh Valley because, you know, one of our roles in the Regional Economic Development Organization obviously is to market the economic assets and the quality of life here. And, you know, we hear that all the time from folks who, once they come here, they say, God, I had no idea it was like this, right? So, and the Lehigh Valley has just been, as you know, has just been growing population and economically to the point where last year in 2019, we went over 41 billion in GDP out of the two counties here, which makes us the 66th largest economic market in the country, which a lot of folks don't realize. And you know, it's great to hear from somebody splitting time between Salt Lake City and the Lehigh Valley say those things. I've been to Salt Lake City several times. It's beautiful out there in the West as well. I'm interested in, what do you see as, you know, short term in light of the COVID pandemic, and maybe more long term as we hopefully move out of this into 2021, some of the major factors or challenges to the mining, you know, cement mill building operations that may be on the horizon or may exist today, whether it's in terms of talent or, you know, demand for minerals and mineral production or cement mill construction?
I mean, our two parts of our business are very different in that regard. As I was mentioning, cement has a very large local component to it. So if the demand for concrete and cement does not increase in the Northeast, there's not going to be any new plants built. It doesn't really matter what happens in South America or even Atlanta. It's really a local business. And right now the cement industry in North America is built up. So the opportunities for new production or new cement lines is relatively small, but there's a lot of room to develop our offerings to the cement industry. And one of the major things that we as a company have is what we call Mission Zero. So Mission Zero means to us is driving waste to zero, out carbon and fumes and that sort of thing to zero, driving efficiencies, and zero water usage. Now that's more in the mining industry than it is in cement. So we are spending our development dollars on new products that will allow the cement companies to reduce their carbon footprint specifically. And many of the cement plants or companies in the last 6 months to a year have come out and committed to going to being carbon neutral by 2050. So that seems like a long time, but you know, in these industries, things move slowly. And so that's actually not that far out. And they've also set targets for as early as 2030 with a dramatic reduction in carbon. So we as a company are putting all of our R&D dollars into developing products to help our customers meet those goals.
So that translates to a lot of the work in the cement industry is kind of modernization or technological development of existing plants, where you're selling new technologies or new developments into plants that are already there, more so than constructing new plants.
That's right. Although there are parts of the world where, of course, as demand will ramp up, developing parts of the world, and they will be installing new cement lines, and then we'll be there offering our complete project plant offerings to those opportunities.
And obviously, development of cement plants is going to be tied to economic growth, buildings, roads. what do you see? I mean, in looking 5 years ahead, the best you can crystal ball it. I know we're all trying to do this in light of what's transpired the last 6 months, but where do you kind of see the international economic growth or the United States growth going in terms of opportunities for continued production of cement and development of plants?
Yep, I mean, probably globally, India is still has a long way to develop. So they're going to continually add to their consumption. And then there are certain selected markets. Maybe it might be a Chile or maybe one in the Middle East where the economic activity is really ramping up. In the United States, the demand is really going to come from the Southeast mostly. Maybe a little bit in the West, but clearly from Texas to Georgia to Florida to North and South Carolina, that's where we'll see probably higher cement consumption, higher cement demand, and where new plants will probably be built in the next 5 years.
So your market, FLSmidth's market, is the world, right? So
Yes.
Wherever there's growth and opportunity, there's opportunity for FLSmidth. That's an advantage of having a worldwide marketplace, but obviously probably has some challenges in selling and making connection with owners of plants. How do you go about that? I mean, how do you go about kind of those relationships, which are probably critical with so many different languages, so many different regulations and economies across the world?
I can't remember exactly how many countries we're in, but we're in it's over 80 countries, and so we establish a local presence in most of our major markets.
Okay.
And so we have local people doing it, and we always try to minimize the number of people who come from outside to do all the day-to-day work with the customer, and that works very effectively. But yeah, the challenges are really the supply chain is a big thing. So how you might supply a company in Atlanta will be different than if it's in Morocco, right? So supply chain is very complicated, and we're pretty sophisticated when it comes to things like that. And you have to be a global company. And then really it's a mindset, right? So we're headquartered in Copenhagen, and we're very much a Danish company, but we think about the whole world equally. We don't just think about Denmark or Scandinavia or Northern Europe. It's everybody in Copenhagen thinks about the world globally, because that's how the company is. So it's that global mindset that makes it all possible.
If you could generalize, what are the primary jobs or skill sets of an employee at FLSmidth, particularly here in the Lehigh Valley, but in general? I'm assuming these are research and development folks, engineers, but what's the kind of the skill makeup of the company?
So I mean, in Bethlehem, very heavily engineering, and many of our people start out in field service. So they actually are the ones going out to the plants and helping the customers either start them up or fine tune the operation. And that field service team is an integral part and really a key part of our success. So a lot of people have come up through that route and then move into maybe a project management. They might move into sales, but the overwhelming majority have technical degrees. And that's where, of course, being in the Lehigh Valley with schools like Lehigh, and I don't know if I'm supposed to say this in the same sentence, but Lehigh and Lafayette.
Well, we do all the time, yeah.
It is a big advantage, and we have some Penn Staters and people, and maybe even Virginia Tech or some crazy school like that. But generally, we get a lot of, or most of our talent from the local schools, and that's a big advantage.
A pipeline. Part of the strength of being in the Lehigh Valley market is the pipeline to talent. Probably internships with places like Lehigh and Lafayette, where you have a regular stream of new engineers available to you.
The pipeline is extremely important, and our positions take a lot of technical training. They're very specialized. So typically a field service person is going to work for a couple of years with other field service people before they'll have gained enough knowledge to operate independently. So one of the things we're constantly juggling is the new engineer versus the 3 or 4 year experienced one, and And so we try to do a little bit of both when we're hiring new young people.
You know, and it's interesting you mentioned that a lot of our work the last 5 years with the Regional Economic Development Organization, which is really a coalition of employers and governments here in the Lehigh Valley, is in the area of talent supply. We're very fortunate in having a wide range of educational institutions here, both on the trade side, the 9th through 12th grade, career and technical institutes, 2 really good community colleges, and then the 4-year schools, and making that connection between what the economy needs and what the schools are producing. As you know, employment, finding quality employees have been sometimes the biggest challenge, and still remain the biggest challenge for companies that are in the market, even during the COVID period, where we've still managed to see lots of growth in the industrial and manufacturing sectors. But really interesting to what you were saying is, for the first time now, we're seeing majority of our workforce is 35 years of age and younger here in the Lehigh Valley. My Generation X and the baby boomers are on kind of the downside. So, and you mentioned that challenge, I guess, a little bit of the new engineers, the young folks, and the older folks. I'm imagining that at FLSmidth, you probably have to spend a lot of time on talent recruitment and then blending of generations and outlooks and perspectives in the workplace.
You know, during times like COVID, when things aren't going great, it's really difficult to contribute the resources to the training necessary. So that can kind of bring everything to a halt, and that's unfortunate. But we do have to mix it because of the training required with young people. But my view of the talent pool is outstanding. I am probably one of the problems in the Lehigh Valley, I'm guessing, is that you have trouble retaining all the college graduates. They all go to other locations, and so
yeah, it's become less of that over the last 5 to 10 years, and what we try to get is our talented college kids aware of the opportunities in the market and linked while they're in school. And what we've been finding is, when that happens, many of them choose to remain here. You know, some kids go off to college and they're always going to go back to wherever they came from. But more and more with the growing opportunities, you're seeing more and more of the young people stay. We actually have, now in our general population, about 50% of our population is 35 and younger. So it's very different than when I came out of high school in the early 80s, when Bethlehem Steel was, the dominant industry in the Lehigh Valley. But manufacturing still remains at the core of what's done here. It's our second largest sector. But we've been talking a lot about FLSmidth, your views of the Valley. How about a little bit about you? What is, if this were a cocktail party, we had a drink in our hand, what are the things you like to do when you're not running FLSmidth?
When I'm not on an airplane.
And I'm not on an airplane. It's probably not too often, right?
Well, you may have picked up. I like going out to eat and trying different foods and stuff like that, and certainly enjoy.
Are you a cook? Do you cook?
I am not. Lisa, my wife, would tell you that very quickly. But we enjoy traveling. We enjoy visiting places like New York or going to Europe and traveling and seeing new things. That's a major thing. And then I have to admit, I like to play golf. So of course, Lehigh Valley is second to none in that area also.
Yeah. How about now? You're living out there in the great ski country. Any ski?
Yes. So I used to be a skier, but I've sort of retired from that particular activity.
Well, Pat, we're just thrilled that you're in the position you're in. We're so proud of the presence of FLSmidth here in Bethlehem and the Lehigh Valley, the legacy, the heritage, your vision for it. I think it's been great for our folks, even in this half-hour video segment, to get a chance to know you better. We look forward to, when the time is right, to seeing you in person, hopefully hosting a reception with you. And we wish you all the best in your new role at FLSmidth. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, thanks, Don.
And
really
thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another edition of the new executive series here at the Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation.
We're all doing what we can to stop the spread of COVID-19, and that includes wearing a mask when out in public. How you remove your mask matters too. Take it off from the back and be careful not to touch your eyes, nose, or mouth. Make sure to wash your hands when you're done. You should also wash your mask after each use. Keep masks you've worn in a sealed container until you can wash them. And remember, my mask protects you and your mask protects me.
The new executive series would not be possible without the tremendous support of our sponsors. Thank you to all of our sponsors who have continuously supported the LVEDC mission during this time. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Lehigh Valley Health Network, our premier sponsor, Capital Blue Cross, our gold sponsors, BB&T Now Truist, Fitzpatrick, Lentz & Buba, and Penn Teledata, our event sponsors, Crayola and Good Shepherd, our interview sponsor, Follett, and our production sponsor, Countess COMMUNICATIONS. We also would like to thank our host, ArtsQuest. Thanks again to all of our sponsors. We hope you enjoy the new executive series.